pan-African scammer. 19 Keys is still at it, trying to force Africa down our throats. Listen as he, plebiscite babble, about how good his African coffee is, because of the Ugandan dirt and equator and volcanoes from thousands of years ago. He keeps saying that we will only rise if Africa rise, and we need them, but history shows we have been rising without them for centuries. This video is just an pan-African coffee ad low-key, and trying to make it seem like Uganda is Wakanda. We already have FBA-owned coffee companies. Jada Kiss and his father have a family coffee business. So yeah, we only supporting our own, right here in our homeland.
Peace family, 19 Keys tapping in. I wanted to share a quick thought. I got maybe 10 minutes before I get to my destination. After spending some extensive time right in Uganda, I had some thoughts about the global diaspora in Africa and the relationship and why we actually need each other, right? And it's imperative that I believe that people listen to this conversation. First of all, I want to say, anytime I'm talking about global politics, global entrepreneurship, I'm not talking to people that do not do global business. Most of the time, people don't even have the value, right, to exchange in another place to even be having this conversation in the first place. I'm not talking about saving Africans, right? Most of all, y'all know my saying, save yourself. That's not what I even think they need. And nor do I think that Africans need more Africans, right? There's a lot of Africans already in Africa. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a value exchange. Let me break it down to you, right? So I was in Uganda. Uganda has a GDP somewhere around $30-something billion, right? Black America has a buying power of somewhere around $1.8 trillion. The global African GDP is stated to be somewhere around $3.2 trillion, while they say what's inside the minerals of Africa is somewhere around $44 trillion, and I think really is incalculable. But let's just say we're going by those numbers. Uganda has about 48 million people. Black America has about 48 million people, right? Our buying power is larger than their GDP by 10 times over, right? Now, when I'm thinking about something like that, and I go to a place like that, that has the average age of, the person somewhere around 15 years old, right? Then we look at 30% of the population, 70% of the population is under the age 30. Under the age 30. Just take that into account for a second. That means they have the youth, right? The average age in Africa is 19 years old, right? The average age in Europe, to give you contrast, is 44 years old. So that means that Africa is 20 years younger than Europe. Africa has the future, and so does India, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Now, when I think about doing business over there, first of all, I want to talk to the entrepreneurs, the global entrepreneurs, the leaders, the creators, right? The influencers, right? The infrastructure people, right? You have an arbitrage of value outside this country, to me, that I think is 10 to 100x. And when I was out there focusing on doing the business deal specifically for Supermine so that we can source some of that Ugandan coffee, because things that grow on the Ugandan Ugandan soil, right, are high valuable. Why do I say that? And this is why it's important to understand and to travel to get these experiences. When I was out there, I learned that, thousands of years ago, of course, Uganda had volcanoes. These volcanoes, when you breathe in the ash, it's terrible for us. But once it goes into the soil and it mixes with the soil, right, over thousands of years and hundreds of years, what ended up happening is all the minerals that came from the earth, right, are now within that soil. Magnesium, potassium, all the things that you can think of. So it also has a climate that is closer to the sun because Uganda is right there at the equator, right? Meaning that it is very rich because you're going to get more condensed, right, mineralization. So this is why they actually have the strongest caffeinated coffee in the world, called a Robustus coffee, right? Them, and then you got Ethiopia with a whole nother one, but they can grow high grade and low grade because their soil literally can grow anything. They have a population of people who actually don't even need to make money to survive because there's such abundance of food everywhere. When I say everywhere, I mean everywhere you look, there's food, there's fruit, there's vegetation, right? You can spit on the ground and grow a clone of yourself. That's how good the fertile soil is. And then it's the most beautiful country I ever been to personally when you're talking about views, landscapes, because it's underdeveloped. And then it got me thinking like, God damn, the West is overdeveloped. right? Now, when I'm talking to tourism board, talking to the president, talking to all these different people about business inside that country, right? They did not see what I was seeing. I see a story to be told about wellness, the cognitive garden of Uganda, right? I see a story to where there's so many opportunities that if Black Americans went out there, all we would see is opportunities for us to do business. Then I start thinking about this because they start talking about value addition. They said what happens out there, the problem is that they're always giving away the raw minerals, right? And what they mean by that is they take, when you know the process of coffee, they take a green bean first. This green bean gets exported. It doesn't get roasted. It doesn't get turned into a brand, then get sold as Ugandan coffee. Because oftentimes you might see Kenyan coffee and you might see other coffee and it might actually be from Uganda, right? But the problem is that the farmer is selling this for like a few dollars, you understand me, a pound. But by the time this leaves and goes to goes to another country and they selling it, right? They selling it for tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, right? When you're talking about, increase in price. And so the Ugandan that's the coffee farmer might still be poor, right? Because they don't have the ability to make brands. They don't have the culture, media, and influential power like we have in America, where we can make a brand hot and make it worth billions of dollars like we've done for a long time. Then I think about that correlating to our story. They take raw minerals and they export it, right? Then by the time things are imported back into their country, they're buying it at 100x. Then we take raw influence and export it through media, language, right? Platforms, music, etc. We, as a people, when I'm saying we, I'm talking about Black Americans, we represent roughly 14% of the population, even though I believe that's somewhere around 19%. We can get into that another day. 14% of the population. But that 14% of the population influences 70% of pop culture, right? Now, if we're looking at that in terms of influence and what's the value of that, I calculate that to be somewhere around $5 to $7 trillion. Now, of course, give or take, which I would take to give more, right? Because I think that it's really incalculable, the value that we have. So think about how, Kanye West influenced brands that are worth billions and billions of dollars, but he don't own it, right? We make Twitter hot, right? But we don't own it. So we export raw influence, raw culture. We give that to the world without equity or ownership. So we're both getting bad deals. We've been getting bad contracts for the last 400 years. Now I started thinking, what if the African that has the raw mineral did business with the Black American who has the raw influence, and they create brands themselves, where you have a vertical integration supply chain to where you're getting the best price, right? And you're able to increase the value of that, right? And then you're able to create these brands, and we can do business with each other and bridge the global diaspora. If we make one of the countries hot because we influence it, but then we have equity in the resorts, we have equity in the tourism, we have equity in these things, right? Now, on one end, if I'm building a brand over here, Supermind, right? And it's helping me build up my community in Black America and build wealth. And then on the other end, right, the farmer and the villager that now is also exporting the raw material is also benefiting, because they're no longer getting $1, they might be getting $10, right? So now they can build wealth. So now we have an economic bridge that allows both of us to build wealth for our people on both ends of the spectrum. We take the thing that people said was our weakness and we make it our strength. So this is the way I'm seeing global business. Now, when I'm out there and the way that I break things down, I think that Black America, sometimes, not Black America, but the world takes things for granted when you have them in surplus, right? So when I go to other countries, right, I did a Black business conference in the UK. I did it in Birmingham, UK. Then I did one in London, UK. I did the first financial literacy conference in Bermuda in their history. We set that one off. That was amazing, right? I've spoken all across the world, right? Done conferences in Dubai, in front of the pyramids in Egypt, in East Africa, in South Africa, right? I've literally spoken in Canada, anywhere you can name it. So I do global business as a global entrepreneur, right? And people appreciate it everywhere I go. The problem is when I get to talking about one specific continent, Black people in America get caught up. And not everybody, it's a very small percentage, right? But I was looking at something online that'll put this in context. You know that they call this thing this Jerry Springer triangle. For those who grew up in the 90s and watched Jerry Springer, things of that nature. right? His content was the most divisive. It was the most negative content that you can get on TV. Now, it made America seem crazy because you would think that everybody was going through this. But what happened was there was a small triangle of people that he was actually pulling from, right? Kentucky, Virginia, all of these places. And that represents 70% of his guests. 70% of his guests came from the same area. But nobody knew that. It made it look like these were guests from all over America, but it wasn't. He was pulling people from these white trash places. He was pulling people from these low impoverished places. And it made it seem like this polarizing view, right, of American life was a reality when it was literally taking 70% of all his guests coming from one small triangle in the United States. So I know that the perspective of the people that are the loudest is not the perspective of the people, right, in the world. It's the 1% of people that often get loud. But these people sometimes get loud enough to throw negativity that actually has no logic to it, right? Because if you don't plan on doing any business globally, then a conversation for you is not there at all. It's actually a very niche conversation for people who would actually be valuable. Africans are not over there waiting for saviors. I mean, the people that will do business with you, they don't care who you are. They're not saying, oh, black American, come save me. No, they want people of actual value, influence, power, intelligence, right, and mindset, absolutely, but not everybody. So it doesn't make sense for you to get mad at this conversation, and I'm not sure what narrative that you're actually running off of. Right? The Indian man goes over there, does business. I was talking to them, and they running all kind of businesses, fruit businesses, mineral businesses, and they doing crazy exchange, and they making millions and millions and building wealth for their family. The Jewish man over there is deeply entrusted to the infrastructure of the politics, infrastructure of the business, the media. Right? I did an interview at this media company. Who comes out? This white man walking out. He owns the company. You understand me? You look at the hotels. There's an Indian man that ran the hotel that I stayed at that resort. When you go look at who's making the machinery, the Chinese man is making the machinery. He has a lot of soft influence deeply embedded into that. Who's giving them their weapons? The white man, the U.S. American, is giving them their weapons so they can be a stabilizer in that region. They're doing business. The only person I'm not seeing doing business over there is us. Now, maybe you can break this down in some thesis and tell me, how do we benefit by not doing business with things that will allow us to build generational wealth on the youngest continent in the world that everybody else is seeing as the future? Now, who made this hot conversation? Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey started talking about Africa is the future. I'm going over there in Africa. Everybody got their eyes over there wanting to build. The problem is that Africa don't want to be colonized once again. They would rather do business with their brother if they can establish a brotherhood. Now, I'm not saying that we all come from Africa. I don't go over there like a lost puppy looking for myself. I go over there as an American. I go over there as a man knowing myself and then building based on the value that I have within and the things that I have that are tangible that I can provide as a service, right? So I'm looking to be as a global diaspora consultant, an ambassador, right? Doing high-level business. Because Rwanda got hot because they reached out to an American company called McKinsey and they paid them hundreds of millions of dollars to help them run the campaign. Now, they could have came over here and gave me them dollars. You feel me? I would have ran that campaign. Then it would have benefited Black America and them all at the same time. A man named Diallo went over there to Ghana, and he's the one who curated the narrative about the return. And now Ghana is making billions of dollars. Raw influence, but no equity. Now, don't get me wrong. I went over there. He has massive real estate, massive influence, and he's making massive money bringing people in. Do not hate on that man's business. So, again, I don't think Africa will rise without the diaspora, and I don't think the diaspora will rise without Africa. Why? Because if we're looking at the opportunities between AI and Africa, these are the biggest opportunities of the future. So, execute. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some patience, because doing business on the continent is a completely different type of doing business, I will say. Now, that's all the time that I have on my short ride. You feel me? I'm afraid to have this discussion in my Patreon for those that tap in. Peace to the gods, and the interview with the Ugandan president will be up. Peace.
Never in my career did I imagine that Jadakiss would be making me a cup of coffee. I'm just going to say that right now. Okay, this is absolutely, all right, let me see. Oh my God. Do I have to leave a tip for the barista? You know what? Okay, I'm going to tell you the gospel truth. This coffee is incredible. It is the best. Let me get closer. This is the best coffee I've ever had in my life.
Black, thank God that I am black. Got the world on my back. Put one fist in the air if you love being black. It's a struggle, no lie, but it don't break my pride. Hold my head up high, I survive. I am black. My melanin is sacred. We age slow, no facelifts. We above average, they basic, bro. We are black. I come in all shades. I embrace the sun rays. My history don't start with slaves. I was free before was honest aid. From pyramids to plantations, chosen people, we God's favorites. See Satan rock with them other groups. That's why they fuck with us and stay hating. I'm black. I won't change it for nothing. No jive talking, no shucking. I'm dancing though, but no